Welcome. It's great to have you join us today as we discuss Michigan's cottage food law. I'm April Hunt. I manage the Emergency Response and Enforcement Unit in the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, MDARD's Food and Dairy Division. With me is Tracy Keltner, a food inspector in our Food and Dairy's East Region. During this session, we will present some information on cottage foods in Michigan and try to answer any questions you have. As we go through some of the things we want to cover during this session, please post questions in our comments section. If there are questions we can't answer immediately and we don't get to all the questions, we'll post answers in the comments section as soon as possible. So first of all, let me give you some background on Michigan's cottage food law. Michigan's cottage food law was enacted in 2010, and it exempts certain food businesses, referred to as cottage food operations, from the licensing and inspection provisions of the Michigan food law. The law was enacted to allow food entrepreneurs to operate small food businesses to test the waters in the food industry without having to invest a lot of money in renting or purchasing a commercial kitchen and some of the other expenses incurred in a licensed business. So a cottage food operation is one in which you can make products in your own home without a license to sell directly to consumers at farmers markets and roadside stands. Hopefully the cottage food operation will serve as a stepping stone for a licensed food business, and the business is successful and outgrows the cottage food exemption requirements. There are specific requirements for a food business to qualify as a cottage food operation. First of all, the products being produced must be made in the home kitchen of the person doing the selling, and this home must be in Michigan. If you can't make your products in a licensed kitchen, and you can't make them in a communal kitchen such as a group home, nor can you make them in a summer cottage, a hunter cabin, or your friend or family member's home. You have to make them in your own home of the kitchen where you reside most of the time. And the law refers to this term as a single-family domestic residence. Second, the foods you're making and selling must be non-potentially hazardous foods. And this means they can be safely kept at room temperature and don't require temperature control for safety. Cottage foods must be sold by the maker to the end user. You can't sell your products at a retailer, restaurant, or wholesaler, and you can't have a friend or family member sell the products for you. And you can't sell your products over the phone and online and have them delivered by somebody else. But it's okay to take orders by phone or online, but the exchange of the money and the delivery of the product must be face-to-face. The reason for this is so that the buyer can ask questions of the maker of the products directly, since there's no licensing or inspection process in place for these products. Next, cottage foods must be individually packaged and labeled. There are some exceptions to this, like large wedding cakes, and we'll get to that later. And there's 6 very specific labeling requirements for cottage foods. So we have an example label here. Is that showing up? The label must contain the name and physical address of the cottage food business. So it has to be your street address and not a P.O. box. And you can see Artie here in Casserole City. And have the name of the product, the chocolate chip cookies here. And third is the ingredients must be listed in order of predominance by weight, and this includes any sub-ingredients of a prepackaged product you're using. And so our example shows the sub-ingredients for enriched flour, and here are the ingredients. You would need to include the net weight or volume of the product and its metric equivalent, so down here it's 3 ounces, and must include the allergen labeling as specified in federal labeling requirements. And finally, the 6th item is that you have to include the statement, made in a kitchen that has not been inspected by the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, and it needs to be at least in an 11-point font. And a copy of this label is available on our website if you can't see it very clearly right now. And if you need assistance with your labeling, your MDARD inspector can help. There's a limit to the amount of money you can make selling your cottage foods. The current limit is $20,000 in gross sales per year, and this will go up to $25,000 per year at the end of this year. If you make more than selling this, congratulations, but then you would need to become a licensed food establishment. Finally, a cottage food operation still has to comply with the rules for safe food handling, including personal hygiene, safe storage of transportation of food ingredients and final products, and need to adhere to other state and federal laws and local ordinances. And so a cottage food operation also needs to keep appropriate records for a food business, including sales records and ingredient purchasing information available for an MDARD inspector upon request. And these records are really important in case of any foodborne illness outbreak that needs to be investigated. So Tracy,
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the foods that are allowed under the cottage food exemption and some of the foods that would require a food license to be made or sold?
Okay, sure. Thanks, April. The cottage food allows food entrepreneurs to operate small businesses and produce a variety of food products that are low risk from a food safety standpoint, if prepared properly in an unlicensed and uninspected kitchen, while protecting public health to the greatest extent possible. The allowable products list is based on the food safety risk level associated with certain types of food. People who operate a licensed and inspected food processing business have to meet certain requirements for training, food safety, and handling. Also, physical facility requirements too. Since cottage food businesses are unlicensed and uninspected, it is necessary to limit food products allowed under the cottage food law to those that are considered low risk or non-potentially hazardous. Some examples of food allowed under the cottage food law include baked goods such as bread, cupcakes, cookies, or muffins, fruit jams and jellies, cakes or wedding cakes, birthday cakes, vinegars, dehydrated vegetables, fruits, or herbs, cotton candy, hard candies, dried pastas made with eggs, and cooked fruit pies, but not custard or cream pies since those require refrigeration. These are all considered non-potentially hazardous foods and don't require temperature control for safety. On the other hand, foods that have the potential to cause illness if not manufactured properly or kept at the proper temperature require a food license to be manufactured or sold. These include pickles, salsas, tomato sauces, fruit butters such as apple butter or pumpkin butter, salad dressings, any liquids such as tea, lemonade, coffee by the cup, juice, kombucha tea, pie fillings, pepper jellies also. Pet foods. Cannot make pet foods under the cottage food law. The cottage food law is for human foods only. Pet food manufacturers must be licensed, and we have a separate department that does that. Can't make ready-to-eat foods that require temperature control for safety, such as hot dogs, sandwiches, tamales, popsicles, ice cream, egg rolls. Meat or poultry products, these have to be USDA inspected, so no jerky or pepperoni buns, and also no milk or dairy products such as cheese and yogurt. There is a more complete list of all these can and cannot do foods on our website at www.michigan.gov/cottagefood. Now I'm going to hand this back over to April for some Q&A.
So we're live. This is a new experience for Tracy and I, and we know that it's Memorial Day weekend, so many people are traveling at this time, but hopefully a few questions will come in through Facebook, and if not, Tracy and I will just go through a couple of the common questions that you hear quite a bit out at the farmers markets and in the field. Mm-hmm. So let's see if any questions have come through yet. It's pretty quiet. So we're going to go ahead and go through some of our most common questions. And one of the questions that comes up a lot is people ask about samples. Mm-hmm. And so can people offer free samples of cottage food products at their farmers market?
Yes, they can. All your samples must be prepared in your home kitchen. There's no cutting on site or serving on site. They must be prepackaged in little containers or little baggies or anything like that. Then you, if you make like a dip mix, you can't, that's a tough one because you can't prepare it in your sour cream or cream cheese dip. You can't sample that since the dip mix has to be refrigerated. So any shelf-stable foods like your breads, cookies, pies, muffins can be sampled at farmers markets as long as they're prepared and wrapped in your home kitchen first.
What if I wanted to cut up my cookie into chunks? Could I put a toothpick in it ahead of time and then have it covered and unveil it at the farmer's market? So I don't have to have separate little cups for everything?
Right, as long as a lot of people do like a covered dome container with a lid and then like a toothpick or something in each piece of bread or cookie would work also.
So as long as I prepare and cut it all up in my kitchen at home, I can have it all at the farmer's market.
Yes.
For samples. That's great. Thank you. Well, one of the other things is going from small samples all the way up to large items like wedding cakes. Because how would I individually wrap or package a wedding cake? But I can still do that under cottage foods.
Well, since you will be delivering the wedding cake face-to-face, all your labeling requirements can be on a separate sheet of paper or your invoice that have all your ingredients listed and your contact information, name, address, etc.
And so one of the questions that we've had coming in that is from, let me see if I'm going to go down here. is from Lynette. There's a question about made in a home kitchen and the 11-point font. And she said she was told it could be smaller. Is there any variance or changes to that 11-point size?
Technically, no. It has to be at least 11-point font. What I do have some people do, if it's like a little cookie or something and they can't fit a whole label on it, they hand out their information on a separate sheet of paper or card that has all their information on it. And we'll allow that too, because it's hard to label like little cookies and things like that.
Great, so you can have some bulk information sheets or larger sheets.
Yes,
that are
as
there.
long as we see this somewhere.
And the 11-point, I think, is just so it's big enough to a regular reading eye to see that.
Right.
I always wonder where they come up with some of those sizes sometimes. One of the other questions we had that came in from Wynn is about the pH. If I want to do a pH test on my product, is it sufficient to buy the test strips, and where would I buy those?
No, the test strips are not sufficient. You would have to, it depends what you're pHing. You can't do acidified foods such as pickles, salsas, etc. under cottage food. So I need a little more information on what product you were thinking of producing under cottage food. But you would actually have to send it out for testing.
To get that full pH
To
testing?
get the full pH test. And the MSU Product Center is a good place to start for finding places for testing and things like that.
So a list of labs or service labs to test would be through the MSU Product Center. What about jelly?
Jelly.
For that question.
Okay.
Oh, that's the pH testing is about the jelly?
Your jelly wouldn't have to be pH tested as long as it was just a fruit jelly. Under cottage food, you can't do vegetable jelly, so no hot pepper jelly and stuff like that. Jellies we just consider, the fruit and pectin ingredients.
And I think there's a lot of foods that are cottage food that can fall under the cottage food exemption, and then there's a lot of foods when you start to get into these acidified foods like the pickles and some of the vegetable jellies that are not under the cottage food exemption. If you want to see a full list and really study that and have more questions, our website is a great place to go, and you would go to michigan.gov/cottage food. So let's see if we have any other questions coming in. I think it's just questions about specific products. Please check out our website to get that information. And we also have a email address there too. And MSU, Michigan State University Extension, Go Green, has a class on cottage foods that you can take online. It's a 1-hour webinar. It's $10 to take, and they go through more of that detail as well. So that's another resource that's all on our website that can help you out. I'm going to see if any other questions have come through. We have just a few more minutes left.
Looks like chocolate dipped strawberries.
I think some questions about just the specific ingredients. So let's use that one. We were talking a little bit about jellies, but chocolate dipped strawberries, those are delicious. Can those be cottage food?
As long as they don't have to be refrigerated. So if your chocolate is not going to melt while you're at the market, it's fine, since neither one are potentially hazardous. Strawberries don't have to be refrigerated, and either does chocolate. So yes, those are fine. Any chocolate covered pretzels, strawberries, etc. are okay.
And then somebody has some questions kind of about the pies. We talk about fruit pies are temperature stable, but what about pumpkin pies or custard or meringue? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. Cottage foods, you can do pies as long as they don't have to be refrigerated. So typically no pumpkin, no cheesecakes either, no cream pies, no custard, just your basic fruit pies. Your apple pie, cherry pie, anything that is shelf stable that doesn't have to be refrigerated.
One of the other questions that comes up a lot is about maple syrup and honey. Are those cottage foods?
They are not, but however, there is an exemption for maple syrup and honey, and they do follow the same labeling requirements as cottage foods, but instead of made in a home kitchen, it'll say processed in a home kitchen, not inspected by the Michigan Department of Agricultural and Rural Development. And I believe the limit for that is 20,000 gross sales per year.
So it falls under the same gross sales limit as cottage foods.
I believe so. It's either 20 or 25. I'm not sure if it's gone up yet, but
so it's a $20,000 cap for this year, and then at the end of 2017, as we go into 2018, it'll be a $25,000 cap on gross sales that you can have. So we're starting to run down on time. One of the other questions that Tracy talked a little bit about is if pet treats fall under the cottage food exemption. And I can tell you that they don't. The only human foods are the ones that apply under the cottage food exemption. If you're interested in licensing and selling pet treats in Michigan, it's a $25 license that you'd go to our website. There's an application and details about how you would go forward with that and get the labeling requirements set up. So $25 for a year, and we'd be happy to help you with that too. That's something we do through our Department of Agriculture. It's just a little different than the cottage food exemption we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that you can think of?
I have one more thing that come up. It looks like there's some different kinds of jams and jelly questions that I've come up. If you can prove that they're shelf stable and are not an acid or acidified food through testing, then they may be also considered a cottage food. It's just something that you would have to prove to your inspector that it's safe and it's not potentially hazardous.
Great. And I know we have some other questions that are coming in, and it's exciting to see that the activity's picking up on Facebook Live, and we will answer those questions in the comments afterwards. So that's really all the time we have today, and I just wanted to say thanks for joining us on our first live session on cottage foods, and I hope you found it useful. And again, if there aren't any questions we weren't able to answer in the session, we'll follow up with those answers in the comments section. If you're considering starting a cottage food business, Tracy and I encourage you to read all the information and frequently asked questions that are available online at michigan.gov/cottagefood. And again, we talked about the Michigan State University Extension. They offer online training courses for cottage food entrepreneurs, and we'll post the link, but you can also find the information on our website by searching for MSU Cottage Food Class. Please feel free to contact MDARD. We have a 1-800 number. It's 1-800-292-3939, and you can also email us too. And don't forget to include your zip code if you do email us or contact us, because then we can connect you with an inspector in your area. So on behalf of Tracy and I just want to say thank you and have a great holiday weekend.
Thank you.